Where's his all-in-one graphic? I swear he made one. Ah, beautiful. The Targon Finisher card is sick. The Targon Finisher card is probably one of the best cards in the set so far. Alright, Hunting Board, trash. Jesus Christ. Sorry guys can hear that. There's some people doing things. I thought the damage on the Lurk Rally increased. Oh, no. Wait, that'd be so sick. Hold on. We'll get there when we get there. Hunting Boar, I think, is absolute garbage. I don't know why it's Last Breath, but can't block. That seems terrible. Legion Deserter. Like, I just don't know. The text doesn't imply that it needs to, like, be on board. What if I run Pig with Wolf Rider in a mid-range ramp deck? But, like, they just don't block this card, right? Like, you don't ever need to kill this card. This card's not a threat. It's like Undying, right? If you play a 3-mana 2/2 Undying, and you don't kill it yourself, your opponent just never blocks it. Like, I'm confused by this card because the text says something that doesn't imply what I think it does, which is weird. So I get Wolf Rider. The payoff there seems a little bit suspect. The fact that the Wolf Rider just doesn't like really like make sense because you need a, as like a mid-range like ramp deck, if you were playing Wolf Rider, like you want to be developing into your attacks, but like Wolf Rider you develop after your attack, which is really unfortunate. The card itself is just weird. I was confused with like does it gain buffs in hand? That's what I'm like confused by, because if it does work like that, I think this card is nuts. But if it doesn't work like that, then I don't think this card is that good. It's tough. I don't know. Like its text implies that it does something different. So we covered the first two cards before we had to jump into a tournament. Storm of the Blades, I think, is a garbage card. This card is too slow. This card is the equivalent of like Desert Divide or whatever it's called. No, not Desert Divide, but the other buff card, Desert's Wrath. But it's 1 mana more. Yeah, it's 1 mana more. And the synergy with Blades is obviously worse, right? Because Storm of the Blades Deus 5 mana Emperor's Wrath. Sort of, right? Like, it's this card, what this card is trying to do is detach Aurelia from Azir. That's essentially what the card is trying to do, right? It Blade Dance is 1 though, but like, it's not efficient enough. Like, if we look at Aurelia, like the 2 mana Flawless Duet, that's already like cutting it tight, right? On the efficiency scale, like a 2 mana Flawless Duet is already like cutting it very close. What this card is trying to do is take Aurelia outside of Azir. And I don't think that's gonna work very well because obviously Azir and the Deus cards is what makes the deck. Blade Dance on its own, unfortunately, is a very it's a very weak archetype, and it's only strong if you have Azir and Deus, right? But the issue is if you print better Blade Dance cards, you only make the pairing with Azir better, which puts Daybreak or this like Blade Dance in a really awkward spot, and I think this card is really bad. Mega Tusk is interesting. Here, let me just... They wanted to take Aurelia out of Azir, they make Blades ephemeral. But there's already Azir Hecarim, right? Azir's doing everything better than Aurelia. It might be something like Vandal Commando or another attack on summon buff. Vandal Commando, another attack on summon buff. I don't know what that means. I mean, there might be more like Blade Dance cards as well. Like, we don't know, right? This is maybe like a third to a half of the new cards. So there's plenty of cards we haven't seen yet. Mega Tusk. Deep. Once you're deep, heal your allies in Nexus 3. So the question about this card was whether or not it still heals when you're already deep. And I assume that is the case. It's just like when you're deep, you just heal your allies in Nexus 3. What's really cool about this card is you can heal at burst speed. Yes, that's what I would assume reading the text. Like, it's not like when you go deep, you lose the heal because it wasn't on board, but when you went deep. Otherwise, it'd be very bad. But I think this is okay. Like, if you play one of these onto board, you at least guarantee a 3 heal. Maybe that's enough to save you versus aggro decks. It's okay. It's just like, the payoff of like playing this card after like, you know, you are deep is like a little bit suspect. But I think this card's still okay. I just haven't. Does he heal himself? I don't see how that would be relevant. I don't know. I think you'd be happy seeing it generate off of draw hunters every now and again. I think it's a tech card, right? Like, you only need it if you're playing a lot of aggro and burn. Like, if you're playing regular deep in like a slow meta, you just don't need the card, right? It's that card, I think, for fall. It's cool they can heal at burst speed. It doesn't go on stack. It can heal your Nexus, which is huge. So like, this card looks okay. It might be like a tech choice within deep, but it's not gonna fix deep, right? It's not gonna suddenly make it good into like burn or like pirates. Like, this isn't gonna help that much. It's also technically making the deep pool worse. Like, this isn't a very powerful deep card. Like, on paper, it's already worse than the 4/4 if you just don't care about healing. And there's only very specific matchups where you actually do care about healing. Only in like 1 in 10 matchups outside of a burn aggro deck where the healing will actually matter. Like, healing your allies is cute, right? Because like, you can like, I don't know, like attack with all your deep monsters. They sort of like get chumped and then use this to heal them up. Again, I don't think that's very relevant, but could matter in like, you know, 20% of your games. It was a 3-mana 3/3, I think I'd use it. What if it was a 3-mana 3/4? Is that too good? I wonder. I don't know, like, this card's just not that great. It's okay, it's a nice tech choice, I think, for heal. But like, wouldn't you just run like Thorny Toad instead? I guess Thorny Toad is like a death rattle, or I mean a last breath, and then this is not conditional, so it's interesting. Like, I'd compare this card to Thorny Toad because they serve the same purpose, right? It's just an anti-aggro card that heals your health. Now this card will be better in like the late turns, but Thorny Toad's better because it's a 2-drop, right? It's hard to say. Sputtering Song Spinner. Hopefully you guys can see this. I don't know if like this is too small. Thorny Toad doesn't do shit. Maybe it tosses. I don't know. 7 mana. Burst speed spell. Pick one of 2 new 2-cost. This is supposed to be spells. Clarified on stream. Spells to create in hand and set its cost to 0. Repeat this 2 more times. So what happens here is you play a 7-mana spell and then you generate 3 0-mana 2-cost spells. You get to choose between the 2 spells, which is cool. This is a highly synergistic card for very few things. This is a hex tech. This is a Feral Financer pick where you have like no, they clarified on stream that it's spells. It only generates spells. This is like a Pharaoh's Financer pick when you have like a leveled Ezreal, and then you're playing 4 spells for 7 mana. It's like, okay, would you main deck this card? I don't ever think so. The Investigate lady? What do they mean by new? I have no idea. Because like in the stream, it generated like a Mystic Shot, which is not a new card, right? So like I have no idea what this card means. The text is very confusing, and I don't understand it at all. But I think this card is bad. If you hit it off a Hextech Anomaly or Feral Financer niche situations, it can be a good card, good value engine, whatever. Or like a Hail Mary kind of thing. But I would never play this in my own deck unless there was something very specific that this synergized with. It doesn't synergize with the Investigator Lady because they cost 0. The Investigator Lady like calculates based off of the mana cost that you play this card for. So you play a 2 mana spell or 2 cost spell for 0, it's not gonna work. You have to play a card for 2 mana for it to work. Captive Greyback. This one was like interesting. It's a 4 mana 2/3 overwhelm, but on attack I deal 3 to the blocker, and if it's dead or gone I deal 3 to the next instead. So if there isn't a blocker, you deal 5. So 4 mana 5/3 overwhelm, but if there is a blocker, you get to kill the blocker, potentially. But like, they could block this with like a 1/1, right? And then they only deal 2 to the Nexus. You can, this is like an overwhelm card that you can chump block. Which, after I say that, this sounds not that good. Like, you could technically chump block this and save yourself 3 health, essentially. This card is kind of poop. Wait, guys, am I wrong? This is like this is a Basilisk Rider, but like, pseudo worse. It's like, it's like, is this card bad? This card looks bad. Because like, you can chump block this, and then it only deals 2 to your Nexus. Granted, like, it doesn't die, but like, suddenly your 1 like mana or what your 1 health unit's healing 3 into an overwhelm unit. Like, this sounds bad. I don't know. This card doesn't seem very good to me. Yeah, that's a skill. I'll just Scorch it and Flock, but it has a base of 3 health. This card is so fragile. This card is good as rallies. But like, this card is an overwhelm unit that can get chump blocked, which is bizarre. It doesn't fit what the archetype necessarily wants to be doing. There could be like surprise cases where like, you can like wail on a board and then this pushes extra damage because people thought they're safe chump blocking it. Or like, if you have any ping spell and you ping like a chump blocker, it can deal 5 to the Nexus. Like, there's some niche instances, but otherwise I think this card is like kind of bad. Feels like it should have 1 less HP than it should. You think this should be a 3/2? Or you think this should be a 4 mana 2/2? I think this 3 health stat line is too low. Like, this is so fragile and flimsy. Like, what if this gets like Merciless Huntered? No, granted Merciless would trade for it, but like, oh, yeah, 2/4? Yeah, potentially. Like, what if this gets like granted Vulnerable? Like, this doesn't block. Like, this isn't a blocker either, right? Like, you can't play this and then block. This is obviously an aggressive card, but a lot of aggressive cards have like strong stat lines, so they can at least block. But this can't block. Like, it can't block and it can get chump blocked. I don't know, this card is sounding worse by the second. Unless there's some weird synergy I'm not thinking about. It doesn't seem that good. It's next to Ziggs, it would look like ass. Yeah, for sure. Lord Broadmane. He's Jhin supporter. No, it's too expensive. I wouldn't see any deck or Jhin deck that would want to run that card. This one is interesting. Play, deal 2 to an enemy. Your Jhin things kill, stun, or damage enemies. I mean, it's so bad. It's too expensive for what it does, but it's so interesting. I'm just like thinking about how you can abuse it, and I'm kind of drawing blanks. Like, I don't know how to abuse this card. It's very weird. I think does does Jin kill things because of his skill? You kill something in play? Not even necessarily. Well, I mean, if you kill like if you target a stun or damaged enemy, it kills it, I guess. So it's like a what? It's a scorched earth on a body, essentially. And then it has a potential upside to it if it sticks around. Does that sound slightly better? Use with Mega Infernal Bomb. Somebody said that, or at least I saw that on Twitter. That was pretty funny. It's my next roundup. I don't. Hold on, give me a second. Okay, still waiting. Sorry. It's just Arella Tracker 2.0. But Arel doesn't have a play effect, right? This at least has impact when it's played onto board. And then it has an upside when it like sticks. Is the upside very good? It depends on how to abuse this card. Like if Jin's skill is able to proc this and Jin's skill kills something, because Jin's skill stuns something, right? And deals, no, Jin's skill doesn't stun or doesn't deal damage. Jin's skill stuns something, and then like you can play like a. No, this is. I think Jin Leona will be really good. I really hope so. Jin Leona is definitely something I'm quite excited for. I don't see this being that good. I think the payoff is not good enough. Like you have to build your deck. It depends on like how you build your decks. Like what if you play like. Like Chempunk Shredder? Like what if it's a Jin concurrent timelines deck? Jin concurrent timelines, and you just play like Shredder Synergy. That already sounds stupid as hell. Noxus card here feels like it makes sense with leaked Annie landmark. Yeah, this card needs like more things. I don't know. There's still like half a set like still remaining, and like if this card can be abused in a way that's efficient, then this could be very good if it sticks. Other than that, like it's like a bad tri-beam if you think about it, right? Like this is basically like a tri-beam, right? You play this, it kills a damaged enemy, and you get a 2/4 body. Like, that's basically a tri-beam for 6 unit mana, which is kind of bad, but I don't know how to judge this card. This card's, like, weird. Alright, Winding Light, absolutely nuts card. This is probably one of the best cards of the set. It gives target a really solid board-based finisher, which I think decks like Aphelios would actually really like. Like you can maybe like get around like the star shaping lethals and just like Winding Light with like Crescendum and like kill your opponent. Like I'm thinking like a Diana Aphelios onto Dusk mid-range deck with Winding Light as a finisher. I think this card is nuts. Absolutely like one of the top decks in the top cards in the set. Yeah, you can't get this off a tri-beam, unfortunately. It's a Nightfall card. Chamber of Renewal. This card's interesting because some people like were complaining about it. I hate the design of the card because this whole idea of like landmarks and spell shield and Shurima is just a big pain in the ass. Like I hate everything about this card, but I don't think this card is that good. It's only good in like slow matchups. Like you can't play this into an aggressive field. Like it's just a 3 mana do nothing. And against aggressive decks, like +2/1 in spell shield is like useless. Seems bad with Papercraft Renekton maybe. I like you'd rather just run like Friendship, right? It's combo protection. Yeah, it's very specific. Like certain decks can abuse this into slow decks. But like this is not great. Not a great card. I think Akshan Lee. The issue is like this card is polarizing. It makes your slow matchups better, but it makes your like faster matchups worse. Which I mean is fair, but this whole idea of like landmarks and Shrimas and spell shields is just annoying as hell. This is a very conditional card depending on the meta and the deck you're playing, but could be okay. Affects Viego too, but like you have Hourglass. Like Hourglass is mana. Landmark champions, yeah, it synergizes very well with landmark champions, especially because it like destroys on sight, right? Like this doesn't have a countdown. It's a very cheap landmark that is easy to destroy, which could be very valuable in like progressing your landmark champions. My review is mixed. It's a conditional card. I don't think it's super good. You're never gonna run 3 of these cards. Maybe you run like 1 of them, but like there's already Hourglass and like Rite of Negation that you're competing with. And so it's like just a stat line with the landmark synergy. It's a little bit more questionable. I don't rate this very highly, but maybe it's alright. Also sort to Talia. No, if you play Talia onto Chamber of Renewal, you'll summon both, and then they'll both pop on Talia. So Talia will gain 4/2 in stats and spell shield. With Xerath, it's nuts. Well, it's nuts, quote unquote. You can't just like play 3 mana, do nothing against aggro, and then play Xerath on 4 and say it's nuts. Into like a slower matchup, yes, that's pretty nuts. But again, just very meta dependent. Revna, the Lore Keeper. This one was like cute. It's like hand buff, but like deck buff. It's best for Renekton? Maybe. Like it's best in like these cheese decks. Maybe it's okay in landmark decks, but outside of those, I don't really see it that great. This card is funny. This is a I don't think this will be a meta defining card. I don't even think this is a good card, but it's a pretty funny card. Like this is like Roshan Hearthguard that draws a card, but it's a 2/2, but you can buff it. Like this has meme potential. This has very high meme potential. Maybe it's like a unit-based War Mothers deck, and then like you can just like keep summoning out units and things like that, but I don't see this card being competitive. Very nice meme though. It's really funny. Harbinger of Thralls. Okay, so this card is nuts. So play summon a Frozen Thrall or advance all your Thralls by 1 round. This card is probably the second best card I've seen in this set outside of the Winding Light. I think this is the best card I've seen, and then this is potentially the second best card I've seen. Because not only is this extra Thrall synergy, if you already have Thralls, it's a whatchamacallit on a stick. It's the spell that advances your landmarks by 1. It's so insane. Like this card never bricks in your deck. It's so crazy. Like this will never brick with your deck, which is absolutely nuts. Like maybe like it's board space issues, but I don't know if you're ever that sad or concerned about that. This card is absolutely nuts. Does that make Thralls a good deck? Is to be seen. But for the archetype that it's made for, this card is like the perfect card. It's like everything Thralls want. Yo, Scorpy! Thank you for the follow. Welcome to the channel. Welcome, welcome. Is this tournament starting yet? I'm just gonna keep double checking. I don't know. Okay, cool. Next card, Kinku's Call. This one was interesting. It's a slow mana spell, or it's a slow spell. 4 mana, Ionia, summoning Keeper of Masks. For those of you who are unaware of what Keeper of Masks is, it is this card. 2 mana, when I'm summoned, give your allies +1 attack this round. So you can either summon it now or next round start, and you draw 1. So this is obviously a Ionian elusive like Kinku deck synergy card. You can use this card to like open attack, which is cool. Like you can use this to summon a unit on open attack. I never follow because no one told me you're hot. Oh, Scorpy. I appreciate you, buddy. But the card is like, the card's okay. The concept of like summoning units for spell mana is always okay, especially when it like draws you a card. Like, say drawing 1 card is like, I don't know, 2 mana, maybe like 1.5. and then summoning a Keeper Mask is like 2 mana, maybe 1.5. Like if this was 3 mana, that might be broken. Broken is a tough word. Nocturne Synergy? Why is it Nocturne Synergy? I don't. Oh, because it summons? That's a little bit more of a stretch. You could say that like Sapling Toss is Nocturne Synergy if you're like going that far. But it's interesting because you can open attack with a wide board. Having a draw one's like fine. I think this card's a little bit too slow, or maybe the archetype it supports is not that good or good enough. It's a curious card. 4 mana, 2/3 draws 1 and like buffs your board. It's not bad. It's interesting. Like you could use this card to like create fearsome blockers on your side of the board, and then if your opponent's trying to attack into you, suddenly you have fearsome blockers, right? The concept is super interesting. I love the idea of the card. I don't know if it's good. I don't really know how to evaluate this deck, especially because like decks like the Kinku Allegiance or like Kinku Elusive aggro decks just don't exist. Would you put this in Ari Cannon? Probably not. This doesn't support what Ari Cannon does. And Ari Cannon doesn't exactly need to race your opponent down faster. I think this card doesn't fit in Ari Cannon. Isn't Ari Cannon dead? Ari Cannon isn't being played right now. I think it has decent matchup spreads right now regardless. Like it's good into Pantheon. It's probably fine into like Talia Ziggs right now. Like it has some decent matchup tables, but it's definitely worse than it was. And there's probably just better alternatives. I think you should put this in Katarina Ari. Debatable. Maybe. This needs to have a lot of elusive synergies, and it has to be an aggressive deck. And if there's a deck for that, maybe it's Katarina Ari, but I love the concept of this card. Being able to choose now or round start is really interesting, but it's a little bit mana intense. I don't know, this card's interesting. I don't think this will be super strong, but maybe it'll surprise me. Alright, Protective Broodfather, 8 mana Demacia Dragon. Fury attack, draw a unit. If it's a dragon, summon an attack. This is on par with Revna as a meme tier card. It could potentially be okay. You have to build your deck such in a way that it's very dragon centric and heavy. There's no real way to cheat this out, unfortunately. Like, maybe you run, like, Mobilize. Or some way, like, discount this cost, and then you can, like, chain them out. But if you have the place for 8, it's not a good card. It's what a Demacia draw effect should be banned and slow. Yeah, that's true. There's Herald Dragons. There's Herald, so, like, realistically, if you get this down for 7, still relatively bad. Let's say you play Herald, and then you play like Eclipse. Eclipse Dragon doesn't make this come down faster. You play like Mobilize, which is a bad card. Maybe you're like the Scythian Matriarch deck, but then like you're not running enough dragons. Then if Herald Dragons gets pulled by this, you're banned. Yeah, this card's not good. It's very high deck building cost, and then it's very high cost itself, which is awkward. Stagehand. This is probably one of... this is a very, very interesting card. I wonder if you clone this with the 8-mana SI card. You can play with Citron Matria, but the issue is you'd have to be building your deck in a way such that you have a lot of dragons, right? Like, I don't know what the ratio would need to be for that. Because, like, if you don't if the unit you don't draw, or if the unit you draw isn't a dragon, then I don't think this card is worth, right? I think if you attack with this card, you need to put out a dragon. Otherwise, I don't think it's good enough. And if you don't put out a dragon, then I think this card is bad. Which probably means you have to run, like, what? Let's say you have, like, 30 cards in your deck. And... oh, but it's draw a unit. So, let's say you run, like, 25 units in your deck, it's turn 8, so you have like 20 units in your deck. And then like, what? 80% of them has to be like a dragon. You can summon a soul. I think yes, but then you have to like, if you're trying to like tutor a soul, then like you're running this card and a soul as your only dragons and potentially like your only units, which sounds like a bad deck. I figured it out, guys. It's a Targon's Peak deck with Demacia, and your only units are Protective Broodfather and Aesol. and you're playing like Remembering to create units. You can put Lux. So it's a Lux Aesol deck. Oh no, you can't because Lux is the unit. Okay, so it's a it's a Demacia Peak deck. Let me review the cards. If we have time after that, we'll like do the seasonal story. That'll end the stream. Alright, Stagehand. I know I gotta talk about this card, but my feeling is that this card is only really good in like a very aggressive tempo deck. Now the awkward part is it's an Ionia, so this is like a Jhin tempo deck card. Because like, if you play this in like any sort of slower control deck, yes, you can like stall like turn 2, turn 4, or like turn 3. But the issue with this card is the same issue that Ephemerals always has, right? Like if you compare the card to Haunted Relic, which I would consider like a pretty decent like comparison if used offensively. Now of course Haunted Relic has better like attack, Hecarim / Lucian synergy, but hypothetically if you use this card defensively and you use this card defensively, you're in a similar spot, right? You stop an attack, this a little bit more because they can still attack certain cards into here. This does have Fearsome, which does matter. But like say they're playing like, I don't know, Demacia Elites or something, right? Just a vanilla board just with stats. You can play this unit, maybe stop an attack. You play Haunted Relic, stop an attack. But you're not like advancing your own board position, right? Like this isn't helping you, and it's just not phenomenal. Yes, you can use this aggressively, but the unit has Ephemeral, right? It's basically like a... It's just not good. It's a very tempo burn oriented strategy. You didn't tempos? Yeah, it has to be a tempo or a burn deck. Like some elusive tempo deck or some Ionia burn deck, which doesn't like particularly make sense. Yeah, it's like Sandstone Charger except on steroids. Except it costs unit mana. So this is a very good comparison to Sandstone Charger, right? Or like, you know, you can synergize this with like vulnerable cards, and like I don't know if you want to play Shrima with it. It's just so weird. Like this is such an aggressive card that I don't think it really makes sense in like a slower control deck, unless it's a uber slow control deck that has a lot of remove already. So like Ez Karma might make use of this just to stall out a board state without needing to expend like actual removal, which is valuable because if they get to turn 10, the removal becomes like game-ending burn, right? Otherwise, I think that this card has potential in like recall synergistic decks. So I'm thinking like Ari and being able to bounce this with Yasuo, but that sounds like a completely terrible strategy that I'm not really sure I have the mental energy to try to experiment that. And then the second thing is Deathmark. Like, if you put this in like a slow controlling deck and like run Deathmark, there's going to be some payout to it. Because like I feel like that's pretty insane. It's like for 5 mana you can play a 4/4 stun a unit and kill an opponent's unit for 2 cards. It's not bad, but then like you're very limited on ephemeral cards already. Like you run 3 of these and like 1 of these, and then sometimes there's a payout to it. You'd have to run more ephemerals. I don't know. This card is very strong, but I think it only fits in very limited amount of decks. which I think are aggressive tempo decks. And then the last two cards, or last three cards rather. So we have Harrowing Return, Ren Shadowblade midrange gets yeah, there's some like interesting sort of niche Ionia tempo decks that maybe this card suddenly brings back. A little bit more of a pipe dream, but we'll see. Viego, yeah, so Ionia Viego is also another deck that I think can utilize this quite well. But again, just that's probably like the only slowish deck I would run this in. Maybe Ez Karma. I can see this in Ionia Viego, but right now the Shrima version is the more popular one because of Rite of Calling to finding Viego. But in an ideal world, if you're playing Ionia Shrima or Ionia Viego and you had no issues drawing your Viego, this looks like a very powerful card. Harrowing Return. Revive an ephemeral copy of the strongest dead allied follower and give allies -1/-0 this round. So we were talking about this a little bit in like one of the team calls earlier. So this is only for dead allied followers. So you can't bring back champions. This can either work in like some really greedy Anivia list where you're bringing back like Anivia Rekindler for Anivia. But like I wouldn't want to slot cards into a deck just for them to have payoff for Harrowing Return, right? Like, I wouldn't be playing Rekindler in Darkness if I didn't want to, just to play Harrowing Return. I think that doesn't make sense. If I'm already playing Rekindler in a deck, then Harrowing Return is maybe okay. Raz Bloodbane. Yeah, so the higher, the place where I see this being more useful is in fearsome decks. So being able to do this -1 this round is the same equivalent of like a Nocturne or a Skitter. And if you can revive like another Skitter, it's a -2. Just having one Skitter, often or not, is just very insane. So I feel like this card is really good in very specific fearsome decks. Especially because you're summoning a unit for mana, right? The awkward part is it's a slow speed spell, so you can get punished by other slow speed removal, where like, I don't know, like Mist Call, being able to burst summon a Mist Wraith doesn't. But if you're trying to develop and like give enemies -1/-0, then like you're always developing regardless. So I think this is still a very synergistic card. Zombie Ash deck. I mean, it brings back Rekindler, right? Because Zombie Ash. Well, Zombie Ash probably also plays Rekindler. This was Cythera. I think this is less of a bring back like a 10 drop ally. Like that's borderline win more. That's borderline win more. Unless you can cheat it out. Like you'd have to cheat out like a 10 drop on like turn 5 and then play this on like turn 6. I don't know. And then it has to have a really strong like on summon effect because it's ephemeral. This is just more of a fearsome card than anything. Realistically, it's good with Skitters and Spiders. Yeah, it's a very good fearsome card. If you can revive a Skitterer with it, that's really insane. Blood in the Water. Lurk, Rally, 5 mana. This is interesting. Back in the day when Lurk was a good deck, sometimes you need, like, a Rally could, like, absolutely crush the game. Like, sometimes you're just, like, a little bit short. Maybe you have, like, 1 or 2 overwhelm units, and you're trying to race down the opponent that has some sort of fast/burst speed combo to end the game. And you couldn't play, like, Jawfish to clear their board. A Rally card could potentially help you win the game. The fact that it is a Lurk spell is fantastic for the archetype. Having to run spells that weren't Lurk was really hurting the archetype, namely cards like Bone Skewer and whatchamacallit, the Ruthless Predator. Found a rocker only Yasuo Jin. I don't know about Yasuo Jin. Like, Jin has like so much theory crafting that needs to be done. 5 mana, deal 1 in Rally, that's the card. Yeah. But it's in Bilgewater. It's a Rally, but in Bilgewater for the cost of mana, which is good. Like, outside of this card, you're locked to Citrus Courier, and now you have a Rally card that actually costs spell mana. So there are some decks that can utilize this to a potential degree.
Lurk being potentially one of them, although only on like turn 6, 7 when you have like overwhelm units, or maybe like a wreck sign to get 2 procs off of it, which is cute, but it's okay. It's not superb in Lurk. There's gonna be very certain matchups. It's not gonna help the fact that Lurk got nerfed, especially Pike, but it seems like an okay card. The Maker, 3 mana, 3/2 play, recall a unit with less power than me. So when I first read this card, I thought it could recall like 3 attack units, but now it can only now that I read it again, it can only recall less than 3 attack units, unless of course you buff this card, right? So like, I think like, sorry, this music is a little bit distracting. Oops, sorry about that. If this could like recall like 3 attack units, I think it'd be a lot better, because suddenly it just becomes like a really strong tempo play. I think to a lot of ex-Hearthstone players, they think of like the rogue card called Sap, which is a 2 mana spell that says recall an enemy unit to your opponent to their hand. And it's a really good tempo card that allows you to gain a big advantage if you like recall like, I don't know, like a 5-drop or something like that, or like a taunt. Now of course something like taunt doesn't exist in Runeterra the traditional way, so the value of actually recalling units isn't actually that good. Where this comes in handy is if the unit you're recalling is like vastly more expensive than the Maker, or like on curve where it's like a good tempo swing and like stalls your opponent. The issue is it's less than 3 and not less than equal to 3. Would you run this card if you had like Inspiring Mentor and buff it to a 4/2 so you could recall units less than 3? That seems like a contrived sort of combo that has to run bad cards to do something just okay. So the more I look at this card, the less happy I am. Not to mention the fact that if your opponent buffs up the unit that is getting recalled, it can fizzle the skill, right? Now you can like play Twin Disciplines to buff the Maker, but like you can't like recall a unit, or like you can't play a buff spell onto the Maker during its skill, right? Which is like kind of awkward. Nosma of Sword Coast? What's up, buddy? Thank you for following. Appreciate it. So, I was quite excited about this card, but now it just seems kind of subpar. I don't know. But, I mean, there's some pretty cool cards. Sown Seeds. Yeah. Like, you're playing bad cards to try to make something okay work, which is, like, essentially what's happening there. Yo, Casino with follow as well. Thank you so much, man. So out of the set, I think there's what, 1, 2, 3. Well, set out of these cards, 1, 2, 3. 3.5. 3.75. And 4. There's 4-ish cards that I think are Deserter. What's Deserter? Oh, Aikedo. If you're still in the chat, like, maybe we can discuss this, but I think this has to be on board to see the Everward buff. I'm unsure about that, and that will vastly change how I view this card. Because in the clip where they showed the Deserter card, they played it first, and then they played Rumble. This with Viego Mist? Yes. The issue is I don't know if this sees buffs in hand and in deck. Because when they showed it, they played this first. And that can greatly change how I view this card. Because I don't know. If it's... you can buff this while it's in your deck, this card is potentially insane. If you can't, this card is probably bad.
But okay, there's 4.5 cards that I think are potentially meta-defining in this release so far. We'll have to see if they release like new support or more support for certain decks. You know, that they've released. Like maybe there's like a second Thrall card that they release, although I don't hope for that at all. If they release like a second Thrall card that's like really good, I might just like, I don't know. I might be playing like 3x Homecoming deck for the whole season or something. I don't know. It's gonna be kind of annoying. But that's just general view. I think there's about like 4.5 cards that are absolutely bonkers and meta-defining. And then there's some decent ones. Harrowing Return I think is interesting. Megatos might help deep. Kinku's Call maybe is like a cool card. I don't know. I don't know what the Runeterra champs would be besides Jhin. Yeah, it's interesting. I love the concept of Runeterra champs overall because they're introducing like new ways that you can build decks, which is opening up a lot of space for design, which is really cool. Alright, so that's that. I forgot if there was something I need to do after that, but I'm tired. I need to do a YouTube video, and then tomorrow's seasonals. What are the 4 cards? So it is Harbinger of Thralls, Winding Light, Stagehand. So those are 3. Those all count for 1 card each. I will give Lord Broadmane a 1/4. I will give Blood in the Water a 1/4. I will give Megatusk a 1/4. Legion Deserter is a potential half a card. And then... wait. And then Harrowing Return is another half, which should bring us up to 4.5. If I was counting correct. But if it's down to just like 3, then it's just Winding Light, Stagehand, and Harbinger. Chamber is... Chamber is like... Chamber is situational. It's not gonna make a new deck. It's gonna make existing ones slightly more annoying in control matchups that I was already beating. Like, this card's like whatever. It might like make like these cheesy combo decks better, but it's still just a 3-mana do nothing. This gets a half point. This will potentially help cheesy combo decks protect their champions a little bit better. Half a star. So that brings us up to 5 cards. There we go. 5 cards that I think are 5 total cards, but not necessarily singular cards, that are potentially meta-defining and potentially could be more meta-defining depending on how much synergy we get for the cards like, I don't know, Lord Broadmane. Like this card, I have no idea how to rate.